A successful game is supposed to create security. More sales should mean more confidence, more investment, and more stability for the people who built it. But Electronic Arts has just given players a much more complicated picture. For its fiscal year ending March 31st, 2026, Electronic Arts reported total compensation of $38,649,984 for Chief Executive Andrew Wilson. In the same fiscal year, the company reduced staff across Criterion, DICE, Ripple Effect, and Motive, the four studios gathered under the Battlefield Studios banner. That contrast is the headline. But the real story is not as simple as saying one executive took money away from developers. There is no public document proving the layoffs funded Wilson's compensation, and most of the reported package was not immediate cash. The deeper question is more important. When a major game succeeds, what does that success actually protect? Electronic Arts filing gives us a rare look at how differently corporate performance and team stability can be measured. Wilson's reported total included a base salary of $1,300,000. It included $6,500,000 in annual performance incentive compensation. It included more than $28 million in stock awards. It also included more than $2 million in other compensation. The $38.6 million number is real, but it is not a $38.6 million cash deposit. The largest piece was equity valued under reporting rules when it was granted. Some of that value depends on continued service, company performance, vesting conditions, and what the stock is eventually worth. The filing also includes a separate number called compensation actually paid. For Wilson, that figure was more than $77 million. That does not mean $77 million in cash was handed over either. It is a required calculation that adjusts the value of equity as awards change over time. These distinctions matter because outrage gets easy when every number is treated like cash. But understanding the structure does not erase the tension. It makes the tension clearer. Wilson's target annual bonus was $3,250,000. The executive bonus pool was funded at just over 107% for his calculation. His individual performance modifier was 186%. The final annual cash incentive reached $6,500,000. Battlefield 6 was part of the company performance discussion. The filing said the game met the milestones for a high-quality launch, received positive critical reviews, delivered stable services and gameplay, and met interim milestones connected to future launches. Battlefield was not the only factor. Electronic Arts also measured financial results, other franchises, business resilience, community growth, and strategic work, including its generative artificial intelligence plans. Wilson was being judged as the leader of the entire company, not as the head of one development team. That is the first boundary this story needs. Battlefield's success contributed to the picture of a successful fiscal year. It did not single-handedly create Wilson's compensation package, and nothing in the filing says reducing Battlefield staff increased his bonus. But the same filing reveals something players should not ignore. The scorecard clearly measured revenue, product milestones, strategic execution, and shareholder value. Based on the public disclosures, it did not clearly measure whether the people who delivered those milestones remained employed. The product could earn credit. The franchise could earn investment. The executive could earn a larger reward. And team stability could still be handled as a separate operating decision. That separation is where this story really begins. Battlefield 6 launched in October 2025 and quickly became the biggest launch in franchise history. Electronic Arts said it sold more than 7 million copies in its first 3 days. The company continued building seasonal content, updates, new maps, and a wider roadmap around the game. Then, on March 9th, 2026, Electronic Arts reduced staff across all 4 Battlefield studios. Criterion in the United Kingdom was affected. DICE in Sweden was affected. Ripple Effect in California was affected. Motive in Canada was affected. Electronic Arts confirmed what it called select changes within the Battlefield organization. The company said the changes were made to better align teams around what mattered most to the community. It also said Battlefield remained one of its biggest priorities and that investment in the franchise would continue. The number of affected employees was not disclosed. The specific roles were not fully disclosed. All 4 studios remained operational. Battlefield support did not end. The company continued publishing roadmap updates and delivering new content after the reductions. Those facts prevent the most dramatic interpretation. This was not Electronic Arts shutting down Battlefield Studios after a successful launch. It was not proof that the franchise had been abandoned, and we cannot honestly claim every affected employee was removed because their work was finished. But the timing still matters. The reductions arrived late in the same fiscal year used to measure Wilson's performance. They came after Battlefield 6 had delivered the successful launch that appeared in the compensation discussion. The game had done enough to count as a corporate achievement, but that achievement did not create an automatic promise that the development organization would keep the same size. A game team can grow during production because the company needs artists, engineers, designers, quality testing, production staff, writers, technical specialists, and support teams moving toward one launch. After release, the company may decide it needs a different mix of people for live service work, future content, or the next project. Sometimes that change is ordinary production cycling. Sometimes it is a financial decision. Sometimes it is a strategic reset. Most of the time, the public gets a word such as alignment, focus, efficiency, or restructuring, while the detailed internal math stays private. That makes motive difficult to prove from the outside. What we can prove is that the executive reward system and the employment system were not tied together in a way that guaranteed shared security. For players, that distinction matters because a game is not only a product sitting on a store page, it is also a living collection of knowledge. Experienced developers remember why a system was built a certain way. They know which technical shortcuts are dangerous. They understand the history behind balancing decisions and which ideas already failed during testing. They carry relationships across art, design, engineering, production, and community teams. When people leave, that knowledge does not disappear instantly, and the game does not automatically become worse. Remaining developers can continue excellent work. New people can bring new ideas. Work can move between studios. Electronic Arts has continued to support Battlefield 6, so it would be dishonest to claim the March reductions destroyed the live service. The honest concern is capacity and continuity. A smaller or reorganized team may have fewer parallel work streams. Remaining employees may carry more responsibility. Future projects may need to rebuild knowledge that already existed inside the company. Those are risks, not confirmed outcomes. The immediate game may continue normally. The effects may appear later through slower content, changed priorities, canceled ideas, or a sequel that has to reconstruct a team. Commercial success gives a publisher reasons to keep investing in the franchise. It does not guarantee that the same people, the same studios, or the same development structure will receive that investment. The brand can be secure while the builders remain vulnerable. The Double Fine story shows the opposite side of the same problem. Double Fine spent years under Xbox ownership. In July 2026, Microsoft returned the studio to independent management as part of a larger Xbox restructuring. The agreement allowed Double Fine to move forward with its intellectual property, its catalog, and financial runway for its next games. On paper, that sounds like freedom. Then, only weeks later, Double Fine announced that 23 employees were being let go. Founder Tim Schafer said only the survival of the studio could make the company consider such a painful action. He explained that becoming independent also meant becoming a size the studio could sustain. Reporting placed Double Fine at roughly 90 employees before the reductions, which would mean close to 1/4 of the team was affected. That original staff number remains a reported estimate rather than a confirmed company count. This is not the same story as Electronic Arts. There is no $38 million executive package at the center of Double Fine's announcement. Double Fine described its reductions as a survival decision after losing the long-term financial protection of a massive corporate owner. Electronic Arts described its Battlefield changes as a realignment while continuing to invest in a major franchise. The causes are different. The outcome for workers is still instability. Under a large publisher, a successful product can meet company goals while headcount remains a flexible cost. Outside a large publisher, creative freedom can arrive with a financial runway that requires the studio to become smaller immediately. Corporate ownership can bring funding, shared technology, marketing, support teams, and the ability to absorb years of development costs. It can also bring changing priorities, executive pressure, reorganizations, and decisions made far away from the people creating the game. Independence can bring control, identity, and ownership. It can also mean every salary, software license, marketing decision, and delay has to fit inside a less forgiving budget. Neither model automatically protects developers. The Double Fine comparison stops this story from pretending the solution is as simple as removing executives from the picture. Game development is expensive, uncertain, and built around teams that may grow larger than an organization can maintain forever. But that does not place the current system beyond criticism. Electronic Arts' public compensation structure tells investors what leadership is rewarded for. It names financial targets. It names product milestones. It names strategic priorities. It explains how the bonus pool is funded and how individual performance can increase the payout. What gets measured becomes visible. What becomes visible becomes easier to defend, reward, and repeat. Workforce continuity did not appear with the same clarity. There was no obvious chief executive metric saying a successful franchise should retain a specific percentage of its experienced development team. There was no public score showing whether key knowledge remained inside the studios. There was no disclosed reward for avoiding cuts after a record launch. That absence does not prove Electronic Arts ignored employees. Companies manage people through systems that never appear in a compensation table, but it shows what investors are formally invited to evaluate. Revenue is visible, earnings are visible, launch milestones are visible, shareholder return is visible. Team continuity is mostly invisible until people lose their jobs. The public reaction comes from that imbalance. Players see the game succeed and assume the people succeeded with it. Corporate reporting separates those outcomes. The game can be praised as a milestone, while staffing is described as an adjustment. The executive package can increase while the number of affected developers remains undisclosed. Defenders of this structure have a real argument. A chief executive runs the whole company. Most of Wilson's reported package was equity. Battlefield was one part of a larger scorecard. Large productions do not always need the same staffing level after launch. All of that can be true. The criticism can also remain true. If a company rewards leadership for successful products without also measuring the stability of the teams behind those products, success will not be shared in the same way across the organization. This pattern reaches beyond Electronic Arts, though every publisher has its own compensation plan, and each reduction has its own circumstances. Across the games industry, companies use words such as focus, efficiency, alignment, and sustainable growth when reducing staff. Executive compensation at public publishers is commonly tied to financial performance, stock value, strategic milestones, and product execution. Employee retention may matter internally, but it rarely appears with the same prominence in public explanations of chief executive rewards. That does not create a universal rule that every successful game leads to layoffs. Some teams grow after launch. The industry evidence is mixed. But the Electronic Arts case proves that two outcomes can separate. Battlefield 6 could be the largest launch in franchise history. It could meet the quality, stability, and future milestone expectations described in the filing. Electronic Arts could continue investing in the franchise. Andrew Wilson could receive a larger compensation package based on company-wide performance. And staff across every Battlefield studio could still be reduced before the fiscal year ended. Those facts can coexist. Game success protects what the company has formally decided success is supposed to protect. It can protect revenue. It can protect the commercial future of a franchise. It can support executive performance measurements. It can give a publisher reasons to keep funding updates and sequels. It does not automatically protect individual jobs, the size of a studio, or the continuity of the exact team that created the result. Players should stop treating the sentence, "This game sold well," as proof that the developers are secure. Those are two separate questions. Did the product make money and meet its goals? Has the company committed to retaining the people and knowledge that delivered those goals? That second question requires different evidence. Look for transparent staffing commitments. Look for whether the same studios remain responsible for future content. Look for whether experienced developers stay through the next production cycle. Look for whether live support continues at the promised pace. And look at what executive systems actually reward. A compensation table cannot explain every decision, but it shows which outcomes the board chose to attach to money. When revenue, product milestones, and shareholder return receive exact measurements while team continuity remains vague, the system has told us which results are easiest to protect. The fair conclusion is not that Andrew Wilson personally took money from Battlefield developers. The evidence does not prove it. The fair conclusion is that Electronic Arts had a system capable of recognizing Battlefield's success, increasing executive rewards, and reducing studio staff inside the same fiscal year without treating those outcomes as incompatible. Double Fine shows that leaving a corporate owner does not automatically fix the vulnerability. Creative independence can protect identity and ownership while forcing a studio to become smaller just to survive. The problem is bigger than one executive or one publisher. Modern gaming can preserve a franchise and its revenue while allowing the team behind it to change, shrink, or disappear. Buying a game and supporting its expansions can strengthen the case for more content. It does not create a direct promise that the people who built it will receive long-term security. That promise has to come from the company. Until publishers measure team stability with the same seriousness they measure revenue and launch performance, the safest assumption is this: a hit game may protect the future of the brand. It may not protect the future of the people who made it. Gaming Realm is built to take messy gaming news and turn it into a clear story about what is actually changing. In this story, what is changing is the meaning of success itself. Success used to feel like safety. Inside modern gaming companies, it may only mean the product has earned another future. The team still has to prove it will be allowed to share in it.